Great, we are on. Hello, everyone, and welcome to my Being Your Brand live series. So, firstly, because I've done about 4 of these, and I've realised I haven't really introduced myself. So, I thought actually maybe this time around I should give myself a little introduction. So, quick one. I'm Aarti Parmar. I am a certified brand strategist and coach, and what that really actually means for me is that I love working with aspiring legacy leaders, aka growth focused, heart centered business owners who are here to make a lasting change and impact through their brand. So I help them to define and position their business and personal brand so that they can use it with intent, joy, and effect. And, as time and years have gone on, we know now, how important it is to be building your personal brand, and more importantly, how intentional you really do need to be getting about it. This isn't should I, shouldn't I? It's more like, how can I get more intentional about it? So this is where the idea of being your brand has come about. It's in response to that because I am surrounded by just amazing visionary founders. And I thought, you know what, it would be lovely to actually have conversations with people who are already walking their talk. So Being Your Brand Live series is a conversation with visionary founders, who have built effective personal brands, created meaningful success and meaningful and commercial success, because obviously they've both got to play hand in hand, and that's by being fully themselves. But it didn't just probably happen overnight. There's probably a lot of self-identity work, self-awareness work that has gone on to actually make this happen. So, with that being said, this conversation isn't so much about the journey that has got people to where they are. It's more about who they have had to become and who they are being to make that meaningful, impact and have that commercial success. So, firstly, hello to everybody. Thank you for being here. Right. So, with that being said, let me please introduce you to my awesome next guest, who actually very much walks her cash flow talk. I've got something here that I'm reading off in case, you keep seeing me turning to the head, because I can't remember everything, because there's a lot here. There's a lot of awesome stuff here. She's a powerhouse in business, presence, and real talk. If you've been in any spaces with her, you know how real her talk is. You know what I'm talking about. And if you haven't, you're going to have the pleasure of listening to this today. So please meet Yinka Ewuola, a 7-figure coach, consultant, strategist, trainer, and speaker who embodies wealth with wisdom and is dedicated to helping other ambitious women to do the same and have it all on their terms. She's helped companies generate over 25 million in revenue and supports women to never feel they have to make the false choice between money, life, or health and wealth. I love that. I love that. Even when life is living. And I think I heard this term from you, Yinka, I think I've heard this from you, and I've got that from you, along with many of your other one-liner quotes. So please welcome Yinka.
Hi, Aarti. Thank you so much for having me on Being Your Brand Live. I'm really excited to be here, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you again for taking the time to be here. And where I'm actually going to start, because this is another one of your one-liners, and you may have seen it in my post today, rich and rested. That is just so powerful. I always said to you, actually, you should probably have a book of your one-liners. In fact, you are in the midst of writing a book, I believe, so an author soon. Coming back to rich and rested, where has this come about, and why is this important to you? Let me just ask you one question. How have you become rich and rested?
This is a great question, and I love this question because I have had to become rich and rested by intention and by design, because the journey to grow a business in general um, is not generally a business that leaves the vast majority who attempt to walk the path um, as either rich or rested. Most businesses, from those who are familiar with my work, will know that I talk a lot about the business failure rate statistics. For
Mm,
us in the UK, 65% of businesses are gone in 3 years. 90% are gone in 5, and 99% are gone in 10. So most businesses are failing,
mm,
and their founders are not being left rich and rested. Um, and so the first thing that really struck me was that if I was going to have rich and rested as any sort of destination, I wasn't going to be able to follow the blueprints and the paths that were being championed and being promoted as the way to create success. But I also decided that rich and rested as a destination, while it is a lovely idea, actually, the destination is much shorter than the journey. I was like, I don't want to hustle and hassle my way to rich and rested.
mhm,
So I then realized that in order for it to be effective, in order for it to be transformative, and in order for it to really begin to create the right kinds of shifts in terms of health and wealth,
mm,
um, but it would also have to be part of the journey. And
mm,
that is where my work around cash flow, my emphasis on really understanding and getting things like pricing right, the power and focus on embodiment of your values, and a number of kind of really linchpin concepts really has become the underpinning of my work.
mm,
And just by way of why Rich and Rested at all, um, there were a number of touch points and kind of specific scenarios in my life. But the one that always springs to mind is when my mum was diagnosed with breast cancer. So
mm,
she was a fairly young woman, early 50s, um, incredible work ethic. Oh my gosh, I don't think I've ever seen anybody work harder. And and yet that work ethic meant that she was running a business at the time. She had my younger siblings were still at university. She, along with my father, they had, their mortgages and bills to pay. And, she was diagnosed at a really scary time with a really virulent strain of cancer. And her concerns were still around keeping the lights on, keeping the bills paid, everybody else. Um, and in spite of her work ethic and the incredible impact that she has had on millions, and that is not an understatement. My mum is one of the preeminent food experts in the UK, specifically around food.
mm,
Sorry, around children's food. So she was one of Jamie Oliver's earliest advisors on his food revolution. So,
amazing.
so her work has touched millions of people, millions of lives.
Mm,
And in that moment, it occurred to me that she was neither rich nor rested, and didn't even feel like she could really put all of her focus into her recovery because she was still worrying about having to pay her bills. And I
mm,
was like, absolutely. I mean, I stepped out and came away from my banking career to help her in the business, but
mhm,
I also made a vow to myself that given that in her role and in all our roles as women, we often are the cultural backstop. We are the social backstop. We are the carers. We are often those who have a large percentage of, hidden responsibilities. That I didn't want another woman to be in the situation that my mum found herself in and feeling like she had to make the false choice between her health and her wealth, between finishing chemo and trying to go to client meetings and things like that. So Rich and Rested was etched in my mind in a very meaningful way through that
mm.
time. And then I had to really adapt how it would show up because, as I said, as a destination, it's too long to get to that destination, so it needs to be part of the
Is
journey.
there a destination? Is there a final destination, right? In that sense as well. What did you decide about yourself in those moments to become who you are today?
I decided that I was going to be the person who worked out how things actually worked.
Mm,
And what I meant by that was I I was a quintessential good girl. I was a straight A student, apart from A levels, by the way, which was my post today. I was very much focused on. I didn't get straight A's in A levels, and it broke my heart. But actually, that in and of itself was the making of me in a completely different way, which I can share shortly. Um, but I'd always done what I was told. I'd always done. I'd returned exactly as I was supposed to, and I realized that what you're told you're supposed to do and what actually works and gets results, two completely different things. And
Mm,
so I became a seeker of truth. And I really decided that no matter what that truth was, no matter how painful it was to get to it, I was going to get to it because I wanted the result. I was no longer, I didn't care how stupid I looked. I don't care how long it took. I was going to do whatever it took for as long as it took to
mm,
ensure that I would never feel the way that I felt in that moment. And so I became a person of agency. I became a person of radical responsibility. And I became a person who really, everything became really quiet. My own voice became really loud in my own mind. And many other voices that had been so loud before became very, very quiet at that point.
mm. Thank you. Thank you for sharing, in such a truthful way. And that's always something I experience with you, Yinka, is the truth. You don't sugarcoat or anything like that. But your mum
Sugar's
sounds
bad for you.
yeah, very true. She sounds phenomenal, and what an amazing influence to have, in your life. You just said something about, feeling stupid, right? Many of us as business owners, there are times where we do have that feeling of like, "Oh, I'm gonna look silly. I'm gonna, this isn't gonna." How does Yinka deal with those kind of doubts or feelings, or how have you?
Such a great question. I don't the things that make me feel stupid are very different to what most people feel makes them look stupid. So I am somebody who, having grown up as a black woman in a non-black country, predominant country, so being a member of the global majority but living as an ethnic minority, the othering was daily. The beauty signals of, we learned very early on that beautiful was not what we looked like.
Mm,
Professional was not how hair grew. So I've always been party to those messages from an early stage. And so there were elements of things that, people were really worried about, what will people think about, how I look, or those kinds of things. They weren't some of my initial concerns. But as I said before, having I didn't realize at the time, but being able to quiet the voices and the noise around you and to really focus on your own inner voice is a skill, and it's a learnable skill. and
mm,
it's and it's something that it's very much a practice that I have. So I tap into my thinking, my thoughts. I also remind myself of the vow that I took, and remind myself of why I am willing to do what it takes for as long as it takes,
mm,
because I'm not I'm not really in the habit of doing stuff for stuff's sake. So if I'm willing to put myself out there and look stupid, um, then it needs to be for a purpose, and it will be for a purpose, but it will also reap incredibly powerful results, and that has to matter more.
yeah, yeah, beautiful. And you have a big mission, and I think, yeah, exactly. It's really important when you have that real understanding and fuel of what you're really working towards, and the change that you want to see, or the catalyst of change you want to be. In that sense, you do kind of give yourself permission to be like, well, actually, I'm going to try that. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It's data for evolution. um Coming back to what you said around inner voice, how important has it been for you to work on that inner voice, and how do you go about doing it? Because we know, you can have all the business strategy and marketing tactics, just scroll for on LinkedIn for a couple of minutes and you'll see carousels after carousels of, how to do this and template for this and a checklist for this. You can be given all of these things. You can be put into all the rooms with all your relevant target audience and all of that kind of thing. But if your inner voice is actually, overpowering you in ways that isn't serving you and your audience, how do you go about, working on that inner voice?
So, because I'm a person of faith and have been for many, many years, that inner voice piece is always where we start. I always start in terms of my connection to God, and kind of spirit, and really, um, again, that is something that is consistent for me. In terms of its importance, I think it's essential, and I think it's always the essential start point.
Mm,
Um, I'm not a member of the Mindset is Everything crew, because I believe that mindset is important. I believe it is essential, but it's insufficient alone,
mm,
in order to really create sustainable and remarkable results. Um, but that inner architecture, is what underpins. That's the foundation. That's the bit that nobody sees, but that's the bit that everything is built on. And so I'm always minded that it really doesn't matter what the structure that's built is, only as strong as the foundation it sits on.
mm,
And so from my perspective, I'm always minded that it is that inner voice, that relationship with yourself. When everything in the house is quiet and the kids and, husband are asleep and it's just you, it's you and you. That
mm,
is where all of this comes from. And so that, for me, is a very important part of how we proceed in a way that is congruent. And for me, in a time and in an environment of what I can only describe as moral flexibility, um congruence matters to me, integrity matters to me. So I do spend, possibly a disproportionate amount of time, um, on the inner workings, on the inner voice, on the inner architecture, because for me, that creates the strong foundation, really thinking about mind and body.
mm,
It's not just mind. We talk about mindset, but we know that, or at least it's expressed, the subconscious mind is housed in your body. It's the language of which is emotions. And
mm.
so we make sure that we bring those two together. Otherwise, you are going to be in constant conflict. And as the good book says, a house divided against itself will never stand. So,
Mm. And there's that element of when you believe in you, so will others, right?
yeah, and I mean, it's a really interesting point. I was speaking to my clients about this a few days ago, that while I think self-belief is important, what I have found to be even more powerful is self-knowledge.
Mm,
So I don't believe in myself in the way that the, platitudes and the motivational speakers tell you to, because I know myself, and we belief is what you reserve for what you are unsure of. And I
mhm,
am not unsure of myself. I know myself well enough to know that if I've committed to something, I will get it done. If I don't know how to do it, I will figure it out. If it's
mm,
uncomfortable, I will tell myself, this is the price of entry, let's get it done. And so, because I have that self knowledge, I don't need to use my belief in that arena. And because what I've found, therefore, again, in terms of the analogy of foundations and buildings, my self knowledge has meant that I can use my belief in a way to completely extend what I am capable of, because I have that strong foundation of, you know, discipline, focus, consistency, boringness. Like I am, I am unapologetically boring, and I am unapologetic in my, weird levels of commitment and devotion. And yeah, as you can see by my smile, as I said, it really is with no apology.
I love all your weird, bring it on.
Me
It's
too.
beautiful, and it's always a pleasure to be in the presence of it. Well, which actually nicely brings. Actually, firstly, how long have you been running your business now?
So my business started towards the end of lockdown. So we're coming up to our 5 year anniversary, but 21 was our first full year of trading.
Okay, wonderful. And I absolutely want to celebrate you for this, because you're a seven-figure visionary founder now. So congratulations. That's
Thank
amazing.
you.
But it didn't start like that
No,
day
of
one.
course.
So I'd like to hear and learn and understand from you, what's that identity shift that happened to, it didn't just go from zero to seven figure and here I am. What's the identity shifts that have been happening for you as you've been evolving in your journey?
Well, the first of the identity shifts is the one that any successful entrepreneur is always going to have to make, which is the shift away from employee mindset. So it's that shift away from what I call damsel in distress energy of waiting, waiting for payday, waiting to be told what to do, waiting for life to serve you things. And note that I'm referring to the mindset as opposed to the people. I think obviously employees are incredible. We all want employees, for those of us who are building businesses. So this isn't a function of how you get paid. This is a function of how you think. But that initial shift away from employee mindset you have to cut that cord,
Mm,
because entrepreneurship is very much proactive. It is about understanding that you make things happen, that the expression, if it is to be, it is up to me, is very much a heading in entrepreneurship that many people often don't break away from employee mindset thinking. And employee mindset is the fastest way to kill your entrepreneurial dreams. Um, I would say the second and really powerful mindset shift was away from good girl conditioning, because
mm,
good girl conditioning is about external validation. It is about being, getting that proverbial gold star for doing what someone has told you to do. But you're not here to be told what to do. You're here to fulfill the mission that you are on. And so um, there is a lot to be said for that good girl conditioning that keeps you small, that keeps you playing safe, that keeps you wanting to be palatable and acceptable, and sees you pretzeling yourself and contorting yourself into spaces that are really no longer for you. Um, I would then say that, given my obsession for learning and statistics, knowing the rates of business failure, um, I knew that the chips were stacked. The chips are stacked against every business.
mm,
And so being a truth seeker, having to work out and then discovering that cash flow is ultimately what is the difference between a business that is alive or dead, I then had to make a decision about, in the sea of this conversation. And one thing I love, and I'm of course not so narcissistic to believe that it is only because of me, but I love how much, if I search the word cash flow on, in social spaces on Google now, I love how many more searches comes up now. I love how many more people are talking about this. I can
mm,
tell you for free that when I decided to start talking about this, honestly, I was castigated, and people
mm,
were incredibly upset that as a woman, as someone who claims to care about other people, as a Christian, how dare you talk about money, and how dare you talk about it like this? And so I had to make a decision about whether I was going to fall back in line and not upset the tribe, or if I was going to really stand on this particular hill and speak out about this truth. And
mm,
so it is about that courage to be disliked. It is about um, internal and self validation. And for me, it is more important that someone remembers me for helping them to see their own greatness,
mm,
rather than they remember me and think that I'm great. I don't. It is lovely and delightful when people think I'm great, but it is more important to me that they see themselves as great. And so I don't mind if I'm that. And again, I've had clients say to me, "You were so annoying in my feed with all your money chatter." But like I said, they were my clients, so they ultimately gave me money. So
And I love that perspective because that is it, isn't it? It's, our purpose, mission, vision for our business, our brand. Ultimately, yeah, it is way bigger than us, especially if we are really truly here to make that meaningful, lasting difference. Um, so coming back to that bigger sort of mission and vision that you have and are on, what happens? Actually, there's two questions here. When things actually don't go the way that you would love them to have gone, or what you thought in, this is the plan and this is how I want to, for it to be executed, or this is the kind of money I want to make from it. What happens for Yinka and how do you get back on track and anchoring that vision again? And then part B to that question is also what happens when are winning and you're getting more and more successes, from 5-figure months, you're doing 6-figure months. So again, how do you continue to stay anchored? So part one first. Thank you.
okay, so when things are not going according to plan, I'm reminded of the truism that plans are useless, but planning is priceless. I'm reminded that no matter what, nothing goes according to plan. That's not the purpose of the plan. And once I remember that, I am able to put on what I like to call a scholar's mindset and really look at data. And that's
Mm,
the thing. We talk about things not working, but from the perspective of gathering data, everything is always working. It
love.
is not, and what you therefore have it's no longer a scenario of it's working or it's not working. It's a scenario of it's always working, and you're either getting results that you love in the moment or results that you don't love in the moment.
Mhm,
And I really emphasize the in the moment piece, because anyone who has heard, the parable, the Chinese proverb of the man and the horse, and the boy, the man, the boy, and the horse, will tell you that in the moment you don't know what is good and what is bad. You
mm,
can never tell in the moment. You can only know the truth of things in the fullness of time. And we're not in the fullness of time in the moment. And
mm,
so I have the opportunity to um, take a more circumspect approach to looking at things, but also to understand the role that my emotions have to play. And I love the concept of emotional sobriety,
mhm,
um, because there is an epidemic of emotional drunkenness. People are People follow their moods, they follow their emotions instead of following the plan. And
mhm,
so for me, I it is a complete and utter contradiction and dichotomy that a plan is pointless, a plan is useless, but the planning is priceless, but you still follow the plan. But that's what you do. And
mhm,
and the great thing about following the plan is that's available to you when things don't go well, and you're able to adjust and iterate and understand that you get to go again. But it
mhm,
also means that when you're winning, and this is one of one of the biggest things that you learn so much more when things don't go well than when you do. Like, nothing makes us more complacent, more ridiculous, more delusional than success. And
mhm,
so it is a really powerful, again, it's about this self-knowledge piece. It's a really powerful thing to know that you will do what you said you're going to do, even if you hit the goal like before you meant to. You're not going to stop just because you got to where you went. You are going to run through the line, because that was how what you said you were going to do. And so the answer to when things are not going well and when they are is actually the same. Is that you follow the plan, not your mood. Is that
mm,
you understand that the game of business is exactly that. It's a game, and you can win if you will play it to win. But it's also about more about who you become along the way, and
mm.
they are gifts and they are opportunities that money can't buy, and yeah, are never to be taken for granted.
Love that. Beautiful. It's what I'm also sort of taking away from that. It's you get to choose how you perceive it and receive it.
100%. And they are the things, remembering our agency, remembering our choice in the matter is so important. And but again, it's about choosing all of it. I'm one of the reasons I'm so excited to be here is because, obviously your work is focused on brand, my work is focused on cash flow. In so many spheres, our work and our perspectives are at odds.
Mhm.
People, who are like, oh, why are you spending all this money on brand? Or why are be about, your heart, and ditch the cash. And it's not an either or, it's a both and an and
100.
so the thing I love about this conversation is a recognition that if you are focused on the truth and you're focused on what works, it's rarely going to lie in one extreme or the other. It's going to be in that shade of gray.
Absolutely. And I'm a big believer, and I've said this probably in one of the others conversations that I've had, a brand is an energy. It is felt and it is experienced. And that frequency of truth really does land and makes a difference. So wonderful. Right. Okay. We do have some, thank you firstly for, everyone being here and staying here and just now reading some of your comments. I do see a question. Actually, before I go to the question, let me just have a quick look. We've got, so, okay. Vinay, we've got the inner voice is the only one that represents you. Wonderful. Ratna, the inner voice can be our best friend. Did you want to add something to that? Go for it. Go for
Yeah,
it.
I was going to say the inner voice can be the one that represents you when it's yours. But your inner voice is trained before you are conscious of it. And so it's really important that you get back to the truth of your inner voice. And that in and of itself is a job, because
Mm,
other people's words are taken in your voice. And before you know it, you are walking a path that was never yours in the first place, carrying a burden that you were never meant to carry.
beautiful. Yes, Richard. Why are our mums so stoic? Great. True, very true. Right now, the inner voice can be our best friend or worst enemy. Such important work that it is still undervalued to build and strengthen our human sacredness. Right. Stop waiting for a shift when you're working for yourself. Thank you, Rashida. Right. Okay. Richard's question. In your opinion, what should parents do for their kids on the topic of money? Great question.
What an awesome question. So one of the things that I think parents should do is they should recognize that money is multifaceted, and the last of its facets is financial. So parents do a great job of helping their kids to get, kiddie bank accounts, and put money away and begin to understand the mechanisms of it. But what they forget is that your kids see you when you freak out over a bill, or you stop opening your bills, or you're worried about, or the language that you use when they ask you for something and you're irritated because you feel like you can't afford it, and you pass that on to them. That's also what you are passing to your children. And so on the topic of money, it is to recognize that there are because there are so many facets, to really understand that you are writing a money story for your children by the things, and in money in the home particularly, more is caught than taught. So more is being given to them by what they're seeing, what they're listening to, your reactions. And children are highly intuitive. And so even if you say all the right things, you will be amazed that they're not learning what you're saying, they're learning what they see you do. And
Mm,
so it's about the most powerful things that you will be able to do as a parent is to actually have conversations with your children, actually ask them, what they think. For example, I had the most awesome conversation with my sons about the word expensive, because I asked them what is expensive. And, what we realized is what they classed as expensive was actually something that was high priced. And I
mm,
said, okay, so is a house expensive? And they worked out very quickly that you can't tell if a house is expensive until you know the price, because expensive is subjective, it is dependent on value. And again, a really beautiful conversation about a word that is thrown around so easily. I was explaining to them that, a lot of the, key rings and sweets and, like, just because they are low priced, it doesn't mean they are good value. And so giving them a real definition of expensive, giving them a real understanding and real world examples so that they could think it through for themselves. And how that transpired is, again, when we went shopping, it was a great opportunity to see them begin to correct their own language. Oh, that's not expensive, that's high price, that's low price, that's affordable to us, that's not affordable to us. We value that, so we will pay that. Even though it's expensive to other people, it's not expensive to us because that's what we value. Or we don't value this, and so we're not paying this, even though it is absolutely affordable. And that, so conversations with your children around money are as impactful and will be as long lasting or longer lasting even as the mechanisms of helping them to understand, investing and saving and what to do with their money. So with parents, definitely when it comes to money, get the right information and then remember that it's good to talk.
Wonderful. That was a masterclass in itself. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Yinka. Great question, Richard. I think he's just had to go off. We have, are you okay to answer a couple of more
I
questions?
have I have
Right.
all the time you need. I've got a buffer too, so.
Of your time. Right. So Ratna has said, what are your top 3 tips about money mindset for someone who is thinking about or just started their entrepreneurship journey?
Love this question. My top 3 tips. The first would be to really own the fact that your money mindset is your responsibility. And I use that word very specifically because what tends to happen if you do not have the money that you want when you start your business, what you will perceive is that it may be your fault. But fault is not a useful concept as it relates to progress and success. So I like to swap out the idea of fault. I like to input the idea of responsibility. And I like to really help people to understand that wherever you are going next, you're starting from where you are. So let's just celebrate where you are. Let's get clear at where we are. Let's have zero blame, shame, judgment, or justification, and let's own it. Like, we can do magic in this world if we will just own where we are and make a decision about where we want to go next, which is definitely my number 2 tip. Is we it's a bizarre concept from the outside looking in, but we really are not very effective at dreaming in full. Like, we don't really own the bigness of our dreams. Like, I don't hear people saying the fullness of their dreams. When I tell my children, I'm not built that, when we hit the 7-figure target, and I was like, boys, this is what I've done. They were like, oh my gosh, it's amazing. And I was like, it really is. We agreed over £1 million in sales this year, and it's a milestone. It's not the end, because I have big designs for a 9-figure business, not just an 8, but a 9. And they were like, wow. And they were like, my eldest was like, no one ever says that. No one ever speaks about that. And I had to really help him to understand that in my business, because my products are fantastic, as my clients say, because my work helps people, the money I collect is evidence of me helping more people. In
Yeah.
order for me to get to that size of business, I am going to have to help hundreds of thousands of people. And I'm so here for it. I'm here for every single last one of them. I'm so excited to do so. And that's the thing. Money is a great way to keep score. Money absolutely should be the number one focus of a business that wants to be successful, because you cannot outgrow a cash flow problem. But it has to have the right place in your business. And so the final of the 3 tips for someone who is just on the start of their entrepreneurial journey is to understand that the evidence of an improved mindset is better actions. If you are not actually taking better actions and getting better results, then you don't have an improved mindset. What you have is the theory of an improved mindset. If you're not doing better, then you're not actually knowing better. And so it's really important to recognize that mindset improvement is visible. It's not a secret. Everybody will
Yeah,
see.
and there's a lot of evidence in the doing,
Yes.
rather than just in the thinking. Wonderful, thank you. And I love the way you own that. And this is a fantastic example of what I mean when I say, when you're coming from that frequency, Yinka's really owning that. Like, I'm going to be a nine-figure business. She's not just saying it; you can feel it. This is what I talk about. That sort of frequency and where you're coming from. That depth of where you've actually feel it, believe it. And just own it. I love that there is that, you can feel that alignment with you. You don't know how exactly you're going to be doing that, and that's fine with you. You can, that's also
100%. And the point, the importance is the intention, and the importance is the reasons why. And I always say, and again, in whenever the book of Yinka Wisdoms is born, this will be in their front and center, that if you don't make your money matter, you won't make money that matters. Like, my money matters. It matters to the people who will be giving it to me because I have created incredible products and services that help them change their business, their bank accounts, and their lives. It matters to my family. It matters to my communities. It matters to the generations that are to come. I'm making that money matter. And so, from my personal perspective, it's really, you're right. The ownership piece is one that I also think is lacking, and is one that I'm really, like, I feel very passionate about ensuring that I at least align to what I believe. And therefore it's important that I own it as an example, as a model, and as a mirror of what other people get to own for themselves.
yeah, 100%. And that's the disconnect I do see with some business owners of, like, sometimes they're owning other people's stories, successes, that kind of thing.
100%.
And
And even that inner
mm,
voice thing, but
yeah.
as you said, apologies for cutting you off, but it's that inner voice piece as well. We are constantly bombarded with suggestion, and therefore we have to sort through what was never ours to carry in the first place. And so you're right, we do. Business owners do it, but women do it a bucket load because we are taught to do so. It's one of the tools of patriarchy. So I think it's really important for us to recognize that there is a job to do to get back to the truth of us.
Mm,
It's
mm.
one hell of a job.
Yep, yeah,
But
and it's an ongoing one. Let's not, I've had this conversation multi-time, numerous times with people. I've had people say to me, "You're always on this personal self-development, journey." I'm like, yeah, it is. It's not called self-completion. It's called self-discovery for a reason. It's never been called self-completion, right? So it is.
yeah, it is, I guess, one of the concepts I'm always minded of, because I get it, and it can, for those who are not in this space, it can feel and seem exhausting. But the fact is, the proof of life is growth and change. Like,
Mm,
if you're not growing and changing, it's not alive. And so that's a natural law as opposed to one that I made up. So
mm,
it is just a reminder that the journey is what counts. The journey is so
mm,
much longer than the destination. And
absolutely.
so it's important to keep that in mind.
I think I did a post yesterday or day before, and I started off with "the journey is in the journey."
Mhm.
Right.
100%.
Right. I'm just going to finish off with one final question here. Um, Looking years ahead from now, how do you want your way of being to ripple into the lives of people you'll never meet?
I would love for people who I never meet to really know and own their own greatness.
Mm,
I think that when I look at all of the things that I, stand for and really am passionate about, from the things to do with Rich and Rested, from the work that I do, in business around cash flow, strategy, mindset, habits, all of those things are doorways into the recognition and ownership of people's own personal magnificence and greatness. And the reason why I feel that is so important is because at the core of every journey and every decision and all the stuff that we're doing, we are seeking love and we're seeking connection. We're seeking to be seen and to be feel heard and known and understood.
That's
And
sense, isn't it?
yeah, and so much of the wrong inverted commas choices and bad behavior and awful things that it's still about being understood, being seen, feeling loved. And so knowing your own magnificence, knowing your own worth, having a real practical, tangible sense that you matter, that your choices, your voice, your presence is important. Um, Honestly, I can't say that it's like the soul for world peace, but I can tell you that it will absolutely solve a lot of the misery,
Yeah.
a lot of the heartache, and a lot of the confusion, and a lot of the pain that people are in right now. And so
Mm.
I, because I believe, from a faith perspective, that we are, we're fearfully and wonderfully made. We're here for a purpose. And I believe that each of us is born unique with a song that only we can sing. I would love for people, whether I ever get to meet them or not, to know that they have a song and to be willing to be the one to sing it.
Love that. That is so powerful and beautiful. Thank you, Yinka. Thank you so much for sharing what you have. I told you, everybody, whether you're listening live or you're on the replay, just how much wisdom and experience that you bring to the table, lived experience that you are able to share it in this way with so much conviction. So thank you so much for your generosity. Just so you are aware, I am loading up my Being Your Brand series on YouTube as well. So anybody that wants to watch it there, I'll share a link so you don't have to keep scrolling through LinkedIn. We've got some other episodes as well that are already placed there. Do let us know if you've got any takeaways, whether you've listened in live or replay. Do share them in the comments. We'd love to know. And Yinka, if you could please also share where people can connect with you if they haven't already.
Yep, come find me on social. So LinkedIn is my primary platform, but I'm also on Facebook, Instagram, the one they used to call Twitter, TikTok. Like I'm also on TikTok. All the name as it appears on the screen, or drop me an email at hello@calasuccess.com. I'd be happy to talk.
Oh, fantastic. Right. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Yinka, as always, pleasure, and it's always deep and meaningful with you, and I really appreciate that. So thank you, take care, and catch you soon, everyone.
Thank you so much. Bye.